Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. Tonight's episode, Kickin' It. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida, in the Indian Hill studio, next to a tiny little lake. Although Dr. RDV with me from the Great Midwest, if I said something was a tiny lake or a dwarf lake, would that be considered, non-PC these days? Because I know if we were talking about the little people, if I say vertically challenged, people might not understand it because those are big multi-syllable words. But anyway, we're talking about The Mummy, 1999. Brendan Fraser in to me, a surprise summer smash hit, a very fun adventure movie that every now and then when you think about old movies, and we've been thinking about especially Universal horror movies, we haven't talked about mummy movies too much. We wanted to talk about this because it's actually pretty darn good, and it's lighthearted, and it's fun, and it's all these wholesome qualities about it that deserves some merit. And I can't believe I'm sounding so positive about it. So this isn't a work doctor, I promise. What are your initial thoughts on this?
This is Brendan Fraser's best film. I always go back to this. I know he's in doing the Doom Patrol right now, doing that. But I always go back to this. Is like, this is what I know him from. This was like the best thing that since Indiana Jones come out, because it basically was like an Indiana Jones movie, but more lighthearted, I guess. It had a great cast, which I thought was pretty cool. You had Rachel Weisz, you had Arnold Vosloo playing the High Priest, you had John Hannah, who went on from this playing the uncle in here to being in Spartacus Blood in the Sand to being a despicable character. He went from being in this movie, he was an opportunist. He's like a coward, but he's like, oh, I want to get rich. We had Kevin J. O'Connor from We Review. Probably early this year, I think it was, or towards the end of last year. He basically was the guy in Deep Rising. He was the guy on the boat. And here in The Mummy, he's the one where the torch goes out and he gets eaten by the bugs.
Yeah.
And I just felt bad. I was like, oh, because when I first saw this, I didn't put the two together. But after watching Deep Rising, I'm like, and I looked again, like, wait, he's in this? I'm like, holy crap, it is him. Yeah, it is. I was like, oh, I just love it because, like I said, this was one of my favorite movies. I think what really killed this franchise, though, was having the kid in here. I think that's the second one, I believe, right? The first one.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, that's the second one, I believe, because the first one didn't have the kid in here. Yeah.
Well, I think for the movie by itself, it came out right before the summer season there. And, of course, it's the year of the Millennium Bug, and wrestling is super hot, and going to summer movies is absolutely fun. It was also the time when the internet was getting fairly widely popular, and sites were popping up with movie reviews and looking at stuff. And I think the amount of readily available information and spoilers for movies at the time were just starting to happen. And, of course, today, we just understand we know almost everything about the movie before it comes out, and there's this game of putting out fake stuff saying we filmed 3 or 4 different endings, all this nonsense, right? Mm-hmm. Bottom line is, you go to a film, you want to be entertained. How you get entertained or what entertains you, endless conversations to have about. That's why we've created the Extreme Movie Show. For this film, though, I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning. It's fun. Brendan Fraser, plays the lead role in here. Rachel Weisz, to me, is extremely very pretty. They're a nice couple. They have good chemistry. It's a very harmless movie that a young kid could watch, but, some of the CGI, let's just say this, for the time it was decent, and some of it's still okay. Some of it might be, it's kind of obvious, but it's not horrible like, say, Haven, okay, which was 20 years later. But for me, this movie, it's rare that you can get a movie that's fun for adults, for kids, for families, for men, for women. It's lighthearted, but it's not trying to be too deep. And for Universal to go through a long period of time before settling on something like this, I would have personally liked to have seen a darker version of this. I was hoping we were getting it with The Mummy with Tom Cruise. Unfortunately, that was a complete flop, in my opinion, because it tried to do too many things. Whereas this one knows what it's trying to be, a fun, family-friendly action movie, and they left it at that. Perfect. And they hit all the right notes to it. And I got to tell you, watching a packed theater, a lot of people had fun watching this. There was a lot of cheering. You could root for them all. You got who the bad guys were, and yes, people did bad things and would get eaten up by monsters and stuff like that. But that being said, it was fun, and that's what these movies are supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know when you first saw it, but I saw it when it came out, and every so often, every few years, it comes on or something. I'd see it, I'd be like, that's really not a bad movie. I feel like I want to watch it again, and it's something you could definitely go back and revisit too. I don't think anybody acting wise is trying to outduel anybody. Nobody's trying to steal the scenes or whatever. Nobody's trying to act like it's you're going to be nominated for an Oscar, but still, it's a very good movie. And despite what other movies came afterwards and how long between them and what they've changed differently, I gotta say, Universal, about friggin' time you did something right, because my goodness, it was
Well, yeah,
so long for me to see that you got something right. So yeah, I just can't talk enough
I
good
love
things about it.
I love the Universal older films that me and Pixel have been watching those. This was for being the technology that would do it. It was done. It was done phenomenal, and I agree with Ed. Whenever this is on, it's like I could be halfway through the movie. I just sit there. I'm like, I'm supposed to leave. I'm like, well, fuck it. I'm watching the rest of this. It is that damn good. And it's one of those movies where you can actually say they made it well, and it's rewatchable. It's just as a movie. I just feel like a kid watching it. Right, it comes on. I was in my I was probably a teenager, about like 15 or 16 when this came out in '99,
Mm-hmm.
and I enjoyed it. Like I said, this is one of those movies where I just get into it. And reason I think it is the magic in it is because it felt like Indiana Jones, and you get the dynamic where you got the guy, he's an adventurer, and he's stuck to deal with this woman. he's like he's not a sidekick. He works alone, but he's stuck with her, and then he falls in love with her on the way, kind of like we had in Raiders of the Lost Ark. So, but they weren't lovers beforehand, so it was kind of cool to see they actually hated. Like, we took what worked and didn't just do a word for word, shot for shot remake. No, they actually added on to it. They changed it up a little bit. They added this, like Indiana Jones never went against a mummy, so they added that element. It's like Indiana Jones meets the mummy.
Yeah, and I think Indiana Jones was such a huge film, and it was a little bit more of the adult themes in there with the commies in there and the religious aspect and the violence even really. But that being said, you can still watch it if you're a younger kid, especially back then in the '80s. Now today, I don't know how it would go.
Like I said, just like Indiana Jones had the thing when their faces melted and their Raiders of the Lost Ark, this has its own thing too. Like I said, when that guy gets eaten by the you don't see it, but you hear him scream. You know the bones coming around him. It is just gross. It's and that's not only this movie. I'm pretty sure I've seen it in video games too, where they have people go through. I think that's what it was, Uncharted. That's what it was. I think it was Uncharted 3 or 2, where you're going underground. You had to use a torch to keep the spiders and bugs from coming after you because they hated light because they're nocturnal.
Right.
So I don't know if this movie started that trope, if it had already been in other movies, but as far as I know, I still think that's cool. I love, and plus archaeology stuff. That's what drew people into the Terminator games too. Not to, I mean, obviously you had the chick in here, obviously, but it's the sense you're solving puzzles, you're discovering old stuff. You're taking on bad guys.
Well, that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. As a guy, we love mysteries.
Yep.
If you're a history buff, that's there, and that's not just a guy thing too. Let's talk about Rachel Weisz, because Brandon Fraser we know as being kind of that goofy adult that's kind of cool, like a cool dad kind of thing. But Rachel Weisz's character, she's attractive. She's very pretty. She doesn't give off, a sexy, slutty vibe in this film at all. It's a wholesome vibe, and that's not a bad thing. There's not really, if I recall, any language in here either. But of course, there's the bad guys, and it's a little comic bookish as far as or cartoonish their some of the reactions and stuff. But the set pieces are fantastic. Yes, there's CGI in it that's a little hit and miss, but the Beatles I thought were done really well, and crawling under the guy's skin, everything that's fun. But again, you've got the classic tale of girl giving a guy the freaky deaky eye, and they get caught by her man, and so they pay the price, and so we understand the story. We understand why the mummy's doing it, so we know he's the bad guy. But it's not crazy like, oh my God, he's got to kill everybody, damn it. We're not so pissed off about it. We understand it. We're watching how it unfolds, and it's not too hardcore. And that, I think, is the secret to this film, because it's accessible to so many people that yeah, we get the story. There's
No,
nothing really remarkable about it. It's the way they get there with the adventure, with the traveling on the Nile, with, the attack at night on the boat, with them discovering things. It's just fun, all of it.
now this is the third I guess not remake or just reinterpretation of the Mummy, because the original was 1932, and then they did the 59 movie version,
Hmm.
and then this came to the 99. So I never really knew there was that many before that. I knew there was at least one, but 1932, wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Um,
Well, Ed's asking about that kind of in a way, and I wanted to address that here in chat because to me, it's there. Even though this is Universal still, it's a totally different film, and I don't mind necessarily this being done. So I don't. I could say which one I like better, but to me, the older stuff being more horrific and that stuff, I have a little bit more of appreciation because that's where my tastes run. But what I'm really saying about this film here is I'm surprised at how much I like it because it's so clean and it's so wholesome and it's rewatchable. It's not a cheapy one and done where I'm like, yeah, okay, I saw it like the Tom Cruise one. I don't care to ever see it again. This is one that if I was a parent, I would be sitting down with my child and say, okay, hey, you want to watch The Mummy on Saturday? Yeah, that'd be cool. And I wish there were more films like it that you could do that had a little bit of the fantastic stuff in there without being totally, whatever juvenile fiction book series that everyone's, shoving down your throats. I was never into the Hogwarts School of Magic and all that crap and, all the other stuff. And there's plenty of that stuff out there. This is more classic to me, what I grew up on, because I grew up on Universal Horror. I'm glad they rebooted that because, again, like I say, when this came out, not only was it a big hit, there was also the fact that Universal Studios had been around 60, 70 years at this point. They're taking one of their cherished older properties and saying, well, how can we stay relevant? Let's reboot it, but let's do it right. And having gone through it for a long period of time, they finally ended up with this, and I wasn't too sure about it. I'm like, Brendan Fraser in a Mummy movie? Are you kidding me?
yep.
I didn't quite get what they were doing because I was expecting a more mature adult version of it. But what they were able to get, I thoroughly enjoyed. And like I say, the Tom Cruise one looks spectacular. Just be one movie, and that's the real issue I have had with the Tom Cruise version. And frankly, to me, this is a much better film than that one, only because the Tom Cruise one is so hit or miss. We love Tom Cruise here on the Extreme Movie Show. We've talked about several of his films. We'll continue to talk about more of them. I love all the stunts. I love almost the horror element that the Tom Cruise movie has in it, but the goofy, dumb sidekick that he has, the forced, sort of pseudo romantic interest in there just doesn't do it for me. If it was just Tom Cruise and he's, rapscallion, roguish kind of character on his own and discovering stuff and all that with the graphics that they had and the set designs in the Tom Cruise Mummy movie, that would have been great. But it doesn't work.
So this is basically more or less a remake of the 1932 Boris Karloff Mummy, which it had the Egyptian priest, hellbound and resurrecting his lost forbidden lover, princess, it's a few more fight scenes. You got Brendan Fraser thrown in, and it's just. I said I love the fact that it's actually like really kind of actually great. Like I said, this movie marked the end of the blockbuster films in the 90s, which was great because we had all these other films before this. After this, it just felt like there wasn't really many blockbuster films coming after this. This was like one of the biggest ones they had. And Brendan Fraser, like I said, the comedy in this is great.
It suits him. It's the right kind of comedy.
It is. He's like, we gotta go. It's like, it's like, just one more second. He's like, and that's kind of what I felt with and a nod to the Indiana Jones, same thing. He's like, are you kidding me? He's like, I like it. He's like, we gotta go now. We gotta go. It's like, what's going on? Gotta go.
Well,
I love
Fridays. You and Professor Pixel have been doing your first reaction Fridays, kind of a newer show here on the Extreme Movie Show, where you guys are watching something for the very first time and commenting on it. And sometimes we've done a video just talking about the movie before, after you've done that to preview it. And one movie you guys did was the 1958 Hammer horror film starring Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, the horror of Dracula, the first one in the Dracula sequence that Hammer did. Hammer took the idea from Universal horror movies and said, hey, let's do our own. And they, sexed it up, made it really colorful. They put the British spin to it. They also did that with werewolf movies, and they also did it with mummy movies. So I know at some point we'll be talking about them because the one in the 50s, I think it was, that Hammer did, I think did a couple of them, I think has a Christopher Lee as the mummy in it. So he's not only done Dracula, he's done the mummy. So there's a lot of different versions of it, but there's not
well,
enough mummy movies out there.
like
You
I
know?
said, the original to me is the best because Evie, because she says like I don't have I don't have to be like pick up or use a gun or start shooting. She's not that kind of person. I'm a librarian and I'm proud of that. That's what I'm good at, you know. So obviously the second one they're trying to change that, but this first one I like the fact that she's like, hey, I'm a librarian, I do it good, and she actually helps out with the plot towards the end, with her being that, being able to translate all that stuff. You
Yes.
know, we had two separate. That was her role. She was the assistant. She was a librarian. And she knew all the stuff, all the lore and stuff. He's a guy. I'm just gonna start shooting everything. And that's kind of how we are in the game. So like, I don't know what I'm doing, but that thing's coming at me. I'm shooting in the head.
I think they come across as the adult version of when you're like 8, 9, 10 years old, of what your parents would be like if you're on an adventure with them or something, you know. Still effective, but kind of clean and wholesome and everything else there too. You know, not overweight, smoking cigarettes, complaining about your boss at work or whatever. It's not.
Yeah.
I mean, those parents would be cool to have, you know.
And I said this will always be the best movie on the franchise. I didn't care. The second one brought in the kid, and the third one was just like we brought in Jet Li as like, and it's like I didn't need those plots. They're cool. They're kind of like DLCs. We didn't really need to see them at all. This is this is the main steak right here. Those are the side appetizers, and they're like, you're there for the steak. You're not there for the other ones. You know? Like I said, I love the cold cast in this. We get the guy who plays the brother in this. He plays the uncle, John Hannah, who went on to be that Spartacus Blood in the Sand. So I was like, after seeing him like kind of like being a little weasel here, to see him being like in the like this basically in a powerful role and just like taking the slaves, doing what he wants to do with them. I was like, wow, he went from like kid friendly to like, I am just gonna be explicit in every single way. You're gonna see every little bit of me, and you're gonna like it. I was like, that's too much, bro. But, if anybody's ever seen Spartacus Blood in the Sand, that was like they see anything goes. And I've never seen a show that says Jupiter's, cock like 50 million times, and actually then it shows you a whole locker room. I was like, this is made for women. And I got the point where I couldn't watch it more because it's just too much nudity. It's like, so. But anyway, getting off track though. Like I said, the guy is a great actor. He said Rachel Weisz, beautiful. Yeah, and I agree with you, Ed. She's got the girl next door kind of like him, but she's also got that sassy British accent though.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you that's why Mr. 007 being his wife. Arnold Vazzo plays the High Priest Imhotep. The dude, and I guarantee you, even though he's been in other things, every time I see this guy, it's like I think of him as being in The Mummy here. Even though I first saw him in Hard Target. He was the bad guy there.
Yes.
Yeah. And then he went on to do the Blood Diamond. The last time I saw this guy was in Jack Ryan season 2.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So every time I see this guy, the one movie I go back to is the freaking Mummy. Because why? He was such a great actor in this. Like I said, when you have chemistry, and it's believable. And this movie had some CG effects in here and stuff, but you know what? You after a while, the magic that you just get so lost in it. It's like, dude, I just love it. I don't even pay attention to that. I just watch it. It's so enjoyable. It's the movie that if you've never seen this movie and you've seen the Tom Cruise one, go back and watch this. And then if you want to, after this, go back and watch the 1932 one, and you can compare this movie and the 32 one. I haven't seen the 1932 movie. That'll probably be a movie that me and Pixel will probably watch because I've never seen it. I've seen the Abbott and Costello one, so I've seen that, but I've never seen the original one of that. So definitely check this movie out.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing too. When you talk about some of these classic intellectual property type things like Universal had with these books that were in the public domain and still are, like I say, as Disney grew in popularity from the 30s on or something, there's this whole thing about intellectual property, movie studios, and what you can and can't film and make versions of. Same thing happened with music in the 40s and 50s with rock and roll and who recorded what when and all that stuff. And so it makes it a very tough time sometimes when you have an idea, because you have to do all your due diligence as a studio and go, wait a minute, who's done this before? How are we going to get sued? Is it going to look different? And it's always nice to know that, hey, we can always go back and make a Mummy movie. And for Universal's take, we had mentioned earlier at the beginning of this year, we reviewed a movie, The Invisible Man, by Lee Wannell, who did, or Wannell, or however you pronounce it. He did Upgrade, which I thought was the movie of the year from 2018 or whatever. And that upgrade into modern terms for The Invisible Man with the woman in there was very interesting. I liked how they did it. So I like how Universal's going, we can modernize what we do and put a different spin on it, and it can still be revisited and done well. And so The Mummy here, when they redid it, and obviously in 1999, big hit when they redid The Invisible Man, that's great. There's been other movies with supposedly the soft launch of the dark universe, like The Mummy, that kind of derailed it. But there's that Dracula movie, was it 2014? I actually thought was not bad. That was supposed to be the Dracula part to it. And then there was the Wolfman one, I think they had Anthony Hopkins in it from like 2009, 2010, and Benicio del Toro. That was good. I enjoyed it. I was looking forward to Universal kind of continuing that on and then somehow merging all these together. And the only noteworthy thing out of the Tom Cruise Mummy movie to me was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, of course, played by the greatest actor of all time. What's his face from, the movie The Next 3 Days. Who I'm talking. Russell Crowe.
Mr. Brooks.
Russell Crowe. No, Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe was maybe possibly going to, I think, be in a spinoff movie with his own character, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So all these late 1800s, early 1900s type of settings are great, because let's not forget, Dracula, The Mummy, all these things are period pieces. And so it's nice in here too that it's realistic that they've got the really simple plane that they're flying into the middle of nowhere. You don't have a cell phone. You're dressed in all these turn of the century type outfits. Brendan Fraser looks cool because it looks like something you'd wear at the time. He's not wearing the camo fatigues or whatever that you would in today's thing. There's something that's got a little romantic element to it when you talk about older properties and doing things with them. So yeah, another good reason to watch. It's just a really fun film. I can't say anything more about it. It's very high on my list, obviously. Surprised to say it. Normally these gushy kind of family movies to me are schlocky and don't work. You're right. This one does. Excellent movie. So yeah, Ed, you might like it too. The Kevin Bacon Invisible Man. Was that Hollow Man? I don't know which studio that was, but that was one that was a little dark and adult. That's not a bad film either. All right. Well, RDV, thanks for showing up, going over this film. It's a great one, The Mummy 1999 with Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, and a few others. Check it out, guys, here on Kickin' It. Remember, appreciate you guys giving us feedback, sharing, subscribing, getting the word out about it as we grow. You had one more thing. It sounds like you're trying to squeak out, Doctor.
Yeah. We had Bernard Fox in here. He's a Welsh character actor, best for his knowns, basically, which he began doing theater, and then he was in Titanic. He was Captain Winslow Havilow in this. He was in The Rescuers. He reprised his role as the chairman. Yeah, so he's the guy who's been in a lot of different things. He was on Knight Rider, Heart to Heart. Character actor, basically, that's what he was. And it was kind of cool. I'm looking at this guy. I'm like, it's 1990, the 90s. They had people from like the 70s and the 60s, and and we're going at this. Obviously, the model probably already passed away. But I like this. Whenever I go back to these older movies, I like to see the older actors, see what they're in before, because some of them, I may not know them, but you guys might know them being older, growing up watching them.
Yep.
So yeah, he was on the Love Boats and Dukes of Hazzard. He's Fantasy Island.
Love Boat.
Wow, it's dirty. Yeah,
it was murder.
Yeah. The Hound of the Baskervilles, Dr. Watson, 1972. Yeah. So it's like I said, I like going back to IMDb and looking at some of these people, because I'm like, yeah, that guy looks like he's old, and especially within the 90s. I'm like, wait. So I go back and I'm like, I go through a little I'm going down the rabbit hole and I find more stuff. So that's always great about movies too. But definitely, dude, if you guys have never seen this movie, check it out. Check out the 1932 one too. It is a talkie. I was looking at, and I just watched a small clip while we're doing this, and I was listening. It looked phenomenal too. There's a guy when he sees a mummy, he just goes stark raving mad, and I'll just say that right there, the clip in the very beginning is like when he sees the mummy get up and he walks away, and he just starts freaking out because he's like, oh, what's going on? He just starts laughing. I'm hooked. I'm going to watch that soon. Because the thing about older actors compared to the ones today, they actually knew how to act. Definitely, but enough on that. So, Mummy, whether you're watching 1932 or watching 1999, I'd say stop at 1999. Don't go any further. Don't go to Tom Cruise.
Yeah,
'Cause
1999 is all you need to say is what he's saying, and I'm going to agree with him on that. The others, not so much. Yeah, I mean they're definitely not extreme. So yeah, check this out. Like he says, you'll enjoy it. Check it out again, even if you haven't, if you have seen it 50 million times. It's a really good movie, a lot of fun.
yeah,
If you're listening though right now, as we finish up, we're going to be dropping off the stream here now. We're going to be setting up for Top 10 Tuesday, 1987 Top 10 films, and Lincoln from I Love Comics, Old Man Comics, some Disney Channel, The Homegrown Tourist, I believe it's called.
I only got one say. I wanted to say for 1987. What you gonna do, brother, when all the thousands of Hulkamaniacs run wild on you? Because 1987, man, Andre the Giant versus Hulk Hogan. But top 10 Tuesdays, yes, 1987.
Florida Championship Wrestling with Gordon Soley. Book it, baby. Much better than that crap. All right, guys, thanks for listening. As always, have a good night and stay extreme.
Later, guys.